It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Aaron Garry, the CEO of North America for Bizerba, a fifth-generation family-owned company that recently turned 153 years old. Bizerba is a global leader in the areas of weighing, labeling, slicing, and inspection, and their solutions can be found in a wide-ranging array of retail, industrial, and logistics customers. Aaron was born and raised in Kansas City and graduated from Ohio University in 1998 with a bachelor's degree in business administration. He currently resides in New Albany, Ohio with his wife Shauna and their two sons, Evan and Ethan. In his free time, Aaron enjoys watching his sons play sports, exercising, and playing basketball and golf. Aaron Garry, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks, Brant. Great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Well, wonderful to be here. We're just a couple of days before Christmas, although this is going to be released sometime early in the new year. So I hope you and your family are in the spirit of things and enjoying the time off, or hopefully the time off soon.
Likewise, definitely.
Well, thank you so much. Well, starting with family, we always like to start in the early years. Aaron, if you could just tell us a little bit about that, where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Yeah, I grew up in Kansas City. I was born on the Missouri side and grew up on the Kansas side, actually. Kind of your prototypical Midwest middle class suburban upbringing.
Right.
Mom, dad, two brothers. Pretty.
Where were you in the pecking order? Older, younger, in the middle?
I was the first. I led the
You're
way.
the first.
So the oldest. Gap of 3 years and actually 10 years between myself and my youngest brother.
Oh, yeah. That's like myself and my older brother. I've got an older brother that's 10 years older.
Oh, nice.
So in many ways, kind of helping your parents raise the younger ones as well, I'm sure, to a certain degree.
I don't know if they would agree with that, but go ahead and think that. Yeah.
Yeah. All the babysitting anyway.
Exactly.
What did mom and dad do? Professionals? Were they, in the workforce? What were their professions?
Mom was a teacher for a while and then professionally took care of us.
Sometimes that takes a lot of professional approach, right?
It is a full-time job in itself,
as we know as parents. Yeah,
absolutely, right. Absolutely. Dad was in the insurance business.
Okay.
Owns a insurance agency in North Kansas City, Missouri.
A brokerage. Assume he's representing insurance companies, right?
Correct. Independent agent.
Yeah.
And very entrepreneurial guy.
Awesome.
Self-made. Really. I think you'll ask me about who my inspirations are in my life.
Yeah.
But
go ahead. That was my next question.
Number one and number 1A. He's faced some obstacles and he's done a heck of a job building a really successful small business in Kansas City and somebody I really look up to.
What were some of those early lessons? Do you remember, little tidbits of things that he said or things that he did that impressed you when you were growing up?
I think one of the things about him, and I don't know that he necessarily would recognize it like I recognize it, but he really built himself a solid network of people. And it's not something so much that he said, but he always kept a lot of people close and had a network of people that he could tap into when he started his agency, when he needed something to help grow his agency. He always seemed to have the right people to kind of shoulder tap and get what he needed and move things along. So that's
a real important lesson, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. The loyalty that people showed him and how he kept his network growing and tight. I think that's really the biggest thing.
Have you attempted to do the same as you've grown in your career? And
I do, and obviously with the advent of LinkedIn and some of the other tools that are out there, it's a little more formalized.
Sure.
But yeah, it's absolutely a cornerstone of things I try and do. And it gets really hard when your contacts start getting into the thousands and you start talking about a global network of people. But yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a cornerstone of how I do things.
It's important. It's important in business, but it's also important for social issues. I've got a couple of different groups, peer advisories I'm a member of. And, I kind of think of them as my non-executive board of directors. But many of them are also there, when tough times have hit, sickness in the family or problems at home. And, it's really nice to have those guys and women you can lean on with regards to that type of, those issues that come up on either side of your life.
No question.
Yeah. Were you a good student in school?
Yeah, I was pretty good. I was always pretty solid. I probably could have been, I don't want to say spectacular, but I could have been really good. I'm sure you get that answer. I'm sure you get that answer a lot, but it always came pretty easy to me. I was really well rounded and read a lot. So I had a pretty good handle on subject matter even before it came up. So I could do pretty well without studying if I had if I had really applied myself. I'm sure it would have been.
You probably were bored of some of the subjects, maybe that you didn't score so well in.
Some of them, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I always, again, I scored pretty well across the board, but yeah, it could have been really good.
What about outside of school? Sports, music, theater, anything you were involved with?
Pretty much all sports, all the time. Really growing up, competing and competition was kind of a big thing in our house, and sports was really what brought that out. Golf was a big focus for me. I actually played golf in college for a couple of years.
You did? Great.
I did.
Good. Yeah,
I did.
Were you recruited or was it just a club sport?
Yeah, I was recruited a couple places, and I chose to walk on at Ohio University.
Okay.
And actually played for 2 years. Yeah. So that was always a good thing. And coming back to networking and how you talk
about a great sport.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. For social interactions and business for that matter.
No,
as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, but sports all the time.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Dad was an entrepreneur. Were there entrepreneurial things that you did as a kid growing up?
Sure. Yeah. I was always thinking about how to make my own money and not
that
so
extra
much
pocket change.
Yeah. But not even so much for money's sake, but just, always thinking about how to accumulate and then sell things. I remember having being a big baseball card collector and then going in with my friends and trying to figure out how to sell doubles when we had duplicates and things like that. So
fun. And what about outside jobs? Did you do the mowing of the lawns and the paper routes and those kinds of things as well, or was it more?
I did it all. I was probably pretty aggressive in that space. I was I did telemarketing, so trying to set up water softener appointments, American Cancer Society. I also worked at Subway before Subway was kind of a big franchise golf equipment store. I actually had one story I wanted to tell you if you had a second on working at Subway. I think it's a good representation of me and my work ethic.
Was this high school or college?
Yeah, so this was my sophomore year of high school.
Yeah.
And I was actually at the golf course practicing, and let's say it was 2:00 and I had to be at work at Subway at 4:00. So I'm just out there practicing, and a foursome comes through. And one of the foursome dropped off, so there was only a threesome, and they were going from hole 9 to hole 10. And for whatever reason, they couldn't go on without a fourth.
Right.
And so the threesome happened to be, and you may have heard of them, Derek Thomas, Lawrence Taylor, and Cortez Kennedy.
You're kidding me.
I kid you not. And so they saw me hitting balls on the driving range, and they said, "Can you join us as our fourth?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to." But
and you knew who they were at the time, of course.
I did. And I knew they were in town for a charity golf event separate with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I said, but I have to tell you, I can't stay very long. I have to be at work at Subway in a couple hours. And, I play for.
But you're thinking 9-10 holes. These guys are pros. We'll get through it. And
but I'm thinking more. Okay, this is going to be really fun, and this is going to be something I'm going to tell my kids about.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm trying to be responsible and
Sure.
go to
Yeah.
work at
You
Subway and do what
got a
I'm supposed
commitment.
to do.
Right.
Exactly. So I played 4 holes with them, and I stuck to it. And I said, guys, I know I'd love to stay. I'd love to continue this, but I got to go to work. And sure enough, I went off to work at Subway. So
That's great.
it
That's
is kind of
great.
an interesting story.
Wonderful story. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, was it a foregone conclusion that you'd go on to college, Aaron?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay.
was,
Mom and dad had that expectation.
pretty much. And I always wanted to go away too. I think that was all
Right.
part of the college experience for me. So,
How'd you pick the college and the major?
golf had something to do with it. I was
Yep.
either going to go to
Yep.
the University of Iowa and try and play golf, or go to Ohio University. And I went to Athens, Ohio, and just fell in love with the place.
Yeah.
And I knew
Fantastic.
I was going to study business in some way, shape, or form, just because of kind of where my interest lied.
Did you
And it was,
help your parents fund that? Was that where some of the pocket money went, or
I
did you have
didn't.
other
And
things? Yeah.
I've always had a ton of respect for people that do, and knowing the situation that people come out in now with the debt that they accumulate and working that off.
Oh, it's horrendous. Yeah.
I think I was really lucky in that respect. And I'm actively trying to do the same for my kids. I'd love to not have them in that
Right.
situation. So
What was the first job out of college?
first job out of college was actually at a insurance company, because I thought I might want to go
Following
into
your
that
dad's
line
footsteps. Yeah. Right.
Correct. And it was absolutely the worst decision I could have made.
Hey, that's a good thing to learn when you're early on, though, right, Aaron? I tell people all the time, if you're young, go experiment, go do jobs you think you want to do. And it's a great lesson to learn. You don't want to do it.
It's a really salient piece of advice. I mean, go whiff the first one out, and then get things on track. And they had me doing data entry, and it was really your prototypical entry level job out of college. And
it wasn't with dad's office.
No.
It was another broker, or
it was actually on the company side, and it was absolutely brutal. So
so that didn't last long. And then how did you decide to go in the next career direction?
I think you just know deep down, especially at that age, you're a little more flexible when it comes to finances, and not so tied down with obligations, obviously. And you can be a little bit more flexible in making those kind of moves. So it actually wasn't a hard decision. And I think I handled it well. So
tell me about the time you first started managing people.
Yeah, it was pretty natural for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think my style is such that people are attracted to it, and they want to excel. A lot of pretty much all my management experience has been with Bizerba, and
was that the kind of where you really got started in the broad range of larger organizations?
Yeah, I was with a company called Henkel, which I would say is similar to the European Procter and Gamble.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So really there was really where I kind of had a global focus, but yeah, really with Bizerba's where the exposure to that came in.
Yeah. Any good early management lessons that you learned in those early days when you're cutting your teeth, having people work for you? Probably a few that were maybe older than you as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is I ran myself out of gas, worrying about every single detail, and not trusting my own people, the people that, either I or somebody else had hired to do or into a certain role for a certain reason.
Yeah.
Really not trusting their skill set and trying to do everything on my own and sweating every single detail.
Right.
That got me to a certain point in my career, but then at a certain point I needed to kind of back off, and that was really hard for me to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Were there any kind of salient moments, either maybe from previous bosses or even employees, where you kind of had, the knowledge that, hey, this needs to change?
Yeah, I think some of the things that, some of the good things, some of the bad things, I think really how you let people do their job, whether you micromanage. I really am a big believer in not micromanaging. We go through the hiring process and we pick certain people for certain reasons and give them certain responsibilities.
Right.
And I just think it's best to manage from I don't want to say manage from the shadows, but I really look at myself as the safety net for people. Right. So If I see somebody is headed in a direction that they shouldn't be, I can kind of guide from the background and make subtle suggestions. But for me to be, in the daily, hourly, minute by minute, trying to give direction and things like that's A, it's not my style, and B, it doesn't
Right.
work very well for me.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So really that's the best managers I've had are the ones that they provide the direction, they provide the structure, and then they let me go do what I do best. On the flip side, the worst ones are the ones that try and micromanage everything.
Well, you've had a very interesting career, and we don't see this too often where someone who has come to a company and you were there about 6 years, I think, right?
Yep.
You had varying degrees of leadership positions there and then left for a
Mm-hmm.
couple of years and then came back. So first of all, tell us a little bit about what attracted you to Bizerba in those early days. I think that was right after Hinkle, was it not?
Yeah.
You left
Yeah.
them? Yeah.
It was it's when I look at Bizerba, it's a really, if you talk about culture, it's a really unusual but yet very appealing and very special culture
Mm,
to me specifically. It's old line. It's a 153-year-old German family-owned company,
right.
and really with a mesh of blue collar and white collar workers that are in an old line industrial space, but also in this new technology driven retail space. So
Mm,
you get kind of a little bit of everything, and it's a family owned organization. So it has our owner Andreas Kraut is a
wow.
fifth generation family owner, and he's a special guy, who really takes special care in the company and making sure that it's going to pass from generation to generation. And
Sure.
and it's a really special place. And I knew when I left the first time I had to leave because of travel requirements and some other
Right.
family stuff that was going
Yeah.
on. But the minute I left, I knew I don't want to say I made a mistake, but I was very regretful of it
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's really home for me. And,
Right.
and I can't say enough good things about it.
So did Aaron contact you when you came back, or did you reach out to them?
Andreas,
Andreas,
yeah,
right?
so yeah, our So our North American CEO actually reached out to me, with the eyes on a succession plan,
Right.
as he knew kind of what his plans were several years down the road.
Right. Right.
So through that process is how they reached back out to me and expressed interest in me coming back.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, is this a subsidiary that they started up? Was it a company that they purchased? I mean, given that it's been a fifth generation company, they've been around a while, and I don't think Bizerba's been that long in the U.S., or has it?
So I want to say it's about almost close to 40 years old in the
Oh,
US,
right. Cool.
and they started organically, but also grew through acquisition.
Got it.
So it's really been, uh, long story short, it's really come together in a lot of different ways by buying. On the label side, we bought a couple different label companies. On the
Right.
industrial side, we bought an industrial automation company, but on the retail side, it was a little more organic.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. And is Andreas involved on a day-to-day basis? Does he come over frequently? Is the U.S. business a big part of the overall portfolio? How do you kind of fit within their broader company?
That's a great question. I think we're probably the fastest growing, subsidiary that we've got. And
Yeah.
Andreas is over, roughly, I would say once a quarter, very
Yeah.
active day to day. We talk all the time. We actually have quarterly, regional management meetings, so I'm over there quite a bit, trade shows, things like that.
Right.
He's very actively involved, and I always say there's nobody better to come close a deal in the in
Right.
the at least in the U.S. If I need a closer to come in, I'm pretty good, but there's nobody better than him. He's
He's the
he's
one
really
you
spectacular.
gets
Yeah,
on a
he's
plane and come
very
over. That's great.
versatile, and yeah,
Is the
excellent.
U.S. a big part of the overall business, or is there other multiple operations in different countries? How do you fit in within the puzzle?
Yeah, so Germany's the biggest. If you go over to Germany, you're gonna see Bizerba everywhere. The butcher shops, the retailers, the
Right. Right.
industrial plants. They are they are a household name in Germany. So
Right.
that's going to be our biggest market.
Yeah.
Most of Western Europe is pretty big as well, but the U.S. we're right there, kind of 1 and 2 with Germany.
Yeah.
Always kind of
Fantastic.
jockeying for position. So
And
it is, to answer your question, yes, it's a big part.
well, very exciting, and how wonderful to have that type of relationship where you've been asked back. Today, how many employees? I know you're privately held, so you can't tell me sales, but maybe just give us a little bit of scope of the business.
Yeah, roughly 400 in North America.
Nice, nice, great. And headquarters there in Columbus with you, or where is your executive team?
No, so headquarters for the U.S. business is Joppa, Maryland,
Okay,
outside Baltimore,
right.
Mississauga for the Canadian business, and Mexico City for the Mexican
Wow,
business.
wow. And then do you have executive teams in each of those locations? How are you
Yes,
structured in that regard?
yes,
Awesome.
and I, as you can imagine, travel quite a bit to those locations, to customers, to trade shows.
Right, right.
I have a very special and understanding wife.
I would think so, right.
Yeah.
And just those 3 offices then, or do you have manufacturing facilities in other locations?
So those would be the 3 offices where we have the main back office functions. We
Yeah,
also have label manufacturing in Boucherville, Quebec, and um, we have an engineering office in Richmond, Virginia,
yeah,
for
awesome.
the U.S.
So you've been, I guess, just a little shy of 2 years, coming up in February, right? When you were promoted to February president and CEO. Is that correct? It'll be 2 years.
So yeah, and I will be taking over North America January 1st.
Hey,
So
congratulations!
yeah, thank you,
Fantastic. So
thank you.
continue to expose that. So looking back, how would you say your leadership has evolved over time, Aaron?
I think I've probably become less emotional, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I'm much steadier. I don't get near as high on the highs or low on the lows. I used to probably have more peaks and valleys in my leadership style.
Right.
I think now I'm a little bit flatter per
Hmm.
se. I'm also much more face to face with the business. Not that I
Right.
wasn't before, but I really think it's important because we're so spread out, and so many things that we do are remote. I'm really trying to be in front of customers more, in front of our people more. The as you know very well, acquiring talent, retaining talent is probably the biggest challenge that I face today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I
Particularly
really
with
want to
50-year low unemployment.
correct.
Hard
And
to
and
find
I,
good people.
again, I make a special effort to hire the people that we do hire. So once they're hired, there's obviously significant expense involved. There's significant effort involved.
Sure.
I want to be in front of them and make sure they're engaged, make sure they're satisfied, making sure they're getting what they need. So, you talk about evolution of leadership style. That's really a new piece of this, is really staying in front of the employees and
Yeah.
and really trying to engage with them face to face.
And then trusting them to do the job that they need
Absolutely.
to do, as you mentioned earlier. You talked a little bit about micromanagement, and
Mhm.
there are times, of course, when you do need to do so. How do you decide when it's time to get more involved, or stay out of the sandbox, so to speak?
So I try and structure the business. I'm always trying to have planning meetings and trying to communicate with our people. But really,
Hmm.
if you ask me, Aaron, when do you jump in and when do you jump in head first? It's a combination of dollar impact, employee satisfaction, customer experience, or the brand. So enhancing the brand or protecting the brand. If any of those 4 factors
Are at
is
risk.
significantly involved, that's when I
Yeah,
go
you
in head
step in.
first.
Makes good sense. I heard it recently said that it's better to have your answers questioned than your questions answered as a CEO.
Hmm.
Have you been in a situation where you experienced that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you say that, definitely, I definitely want people who challenge me the way I try and challenge them.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Again, I really pride myself on hiring good people and making out of the box hires. So there's a reason I'm putting those people in the positions I'm putting them in.
Right.
And if I'm not taking their input into account, or it's falling on deaf ears, shame on me,
Right.
because there's a reason I put those people into place.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely clear. And, obviously in terms of kind of building out your organization, you, you want to surround yourself with smart people, right? And
No
being in a
question.
situation where you've got folks that are questioning some of those things, I've always found it to be very helpful. We do a lot of interviews for executive suite, and, the more curious someone is and the more, kind of challenging they be to the status quo, not necessarily in a bad way, but in,
Right.
why are things working that way? Could it be done better? That's always a sign of someone that's got a lot of initiative and a lot of leadership. You spoke about company culture a little bit earlier, and I can imagine as old as Bizerba is in the U.S. and 40 years here, there was a very well established culture. One, of course, that you were attracted back to step in and eventually take over the leadership role. How do you kind of build on that moving forward? Now you're in the CEO suite. You're now taking over North America. What do you do, or what are your thoughts about building a company culture on top of what already exists?
I think the biggest thing for me as I come into this is we have a strong culture, we have a strong customer base, we have good employee engagement. The
Mm,
one thing that I think I can add to this now in my new role is communication. I think
right.
I think we have employees that are kind of craving to know why things work and
Mm,
how things are going and things like that. And maybe as a management team in the past, we've had some challenges in doing that, in communicating that to our people. And I think that's really priority one for me right now, is to really engage our
mm.
community as a whole, and our employees, and make sure that they're part of the process and that they understand why they do what they're doing when they come to work every day.
Hmm. Hmm. Being that example of good communication amongst others. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say is maybe unusual or unique about your company culture? Again, fourth, fifth generation. Is it fifth or fourth generation? Fifth,
Fifth.
right?
Yeah,
And
fifth. Again, there's just not, I see companies that are second, third generation, but boy, they're at the end of their rope at that
yeah,
at that point in time.
that's
I
right.
mean, we're fifth generation, rolling strong with a global owner that is
Engaged.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
engaged is too light of a word. His sister
Passionate.
Sister
Yeah.
Angela is the VP of finance, and she's involved, and it will absolutely go a sixth.
Yeah. That's
And
great.
it's really fun to be a part of.
Well, the numbers on that, the odds on that are so low. I think the
So low.
statistics are as only, I think, a third of companies make it to the second, 13 make it to the third, and only 3% make it to the fourth.
Yeah,
And and
that
so
pyramid has to be.
beyond that, yeah, you're
Yeah,
less than 1%. So that's pretty
absolutely.
awesome. So bringing people into the organization is important. What do you look for, Aaron, when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire?
So I think the couple biggest things for me are well-roundedness. I
Hmm.
really like well-rounded people.
Yeah.
I
How do
think
you how
that
do you define that? What does that look like to you?
just, and again, it comes back to the interview process. When I'm talking to somebody in a conversational way, and they can go a level deeper on a variety of subjects, whether it's sports, arts, business trends, history. I can tell that they're open to new ideas and that they can talk to a wide variety of people about a wide variety of subjects.
Mm,
That's a big one for me.
yeah.
I know that person not only can do the job that we're looking at them for, but that's somebody that we can open up a lot of different opportunities for, and that they're open to those opportunities and will be
Yeah.
successful at.
Yeah.
So well-roundedness is a huge one.
Right.
Work ethic, loyalty, um, those, I would say, those are the biggest ones.
Are there specific questions that you like to ask in interviews where you can, kind of get a handle on any one or more of those issues?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I have we do have a set list of interview questions per se, but
Right.
but don't tell my HR people, but I tend to go off script. I tend to go off script a little bit and go
Yeah.
more into a two-way conversational, open-ended question type of format, where I dig into things that'll tell me about work ethic, how well-rounded a person is,
Mm,
whether they're loyal. I also, I also like to get opinions of kind of my key people on my management team. I think that's the other thing when we're interviewing. I want to do, get their opinions, have kind of a collaborative approach on candidates, and also sometimes take quantitative measures. So maybe score the candidates or who we're interviewing on a 1 to 5 scale on a variety of topics.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you get involved in interviews, a level below your direct reports?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And what do you look for in those? Does it change at all? Maybe if you only have 5 or 10 minutes with someone, what would you zero in on?
Yeah, when it comes to those, it's really, I hate to say I'm rubber stamping it, but if my direct reports they'll generally bring that person to me after they've made the decision.
Right.
And they want kind of my stamp of approval on it. And in those, that is even more conversational. We'll talk about, what exposure to, I'll actually go a little more deeper into pure subject matter. What customers are you exposed to? Do you know John Smith? Do understanding their depth on certain positions and if it's a salesperson, I generally know all the customers and all the people at the customer. So do they know those people? And just kind of validating some of the things that my direct reports have told me, and just making sure that the person is who they say they are.
Yeah, so. Awesome. Well, Aaron, this has been terrific. We always have one last question we always ask our guests. And, what kind of career and life advice would you give to someone that has their own eyes on the corner office?
Yeah, I think just a couple quick things. I think the first thing is be patient. I've probably you look at my background, I've jumped around a little bit and
not much,
not much, but it takes time. I mean, this is, right. You can't, I know the millennials, and I'm probably one of these old people now that talk about the millennials and how they do things, and they want things, they want to be the CEO when they come out of school. And it just, this takes time. I would say be patient, be loyal, go the extra mile, do things that stand out. I think that was a big thing for me, really trying to embrace strategic initiatives. So, if Hinkle had something that they really wanted to get out to the market, I wanted to be the person to embrace it. Same with Bizerba. We have a lot of different solutions out there, and I always want to embrace the solutions that our people are putting their time, their effort, their resources into. I think that's an important thing, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. Yeah. I think it's important to embrace those things.
Right. Well, terrific. Well, Aaron Garry, CEO of Bizerba US, soon to be CEO of North America. I guess by the time this podcast is heard, you will be. Once again, congratulations. And thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.